going to start our recording. So my name is Courtney Harge. I am the member advisor here at Fractured Atlas, which means it's my job to help support our projects and members as they navigate all of our services. We appreciate having proactive members who go out of their way to learn about our program policies and procedures before they dive head first into their fundraising. So thank you very much. We've established that everybody can hear me. Thank you. And like I said, there will be an opportunity for questions at the end of the presentation, but feel free to chat questions throughout. If it's relevant or if it's something we're going to cover, I will answer your question as I go. Otherwise, I'll save it for the end. Okay. So without further ado, in the last 12 months, just so you know, our fiscal sponsored projects have raised over $18 million. As I'm sure you're by now aware, our official sponsorship program extends some of the benefits of our 501c3 status to artists and arts organizations so that they can solicit tax-deductible donations from individuals and institutional funding, which would otherwise be available only to nonprofits. Currently, we have almost 4,000 projects who are actively fiscally sponsored by Fractured Atlas. They are producing either one-off discrete projects like a single film or dance production, or we're sponsoring them for their ongoing activities like a startup theater company or the work in progress of a visual artist. I, in fact, am a fiscally sponsored artist by Fractured Atlas. I have my own independent theater company based out of Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, and I have been fiscally sponsored for 5 years. We really cover a variety of disciplines, of artist practices, and genres. Ultimately, we have the largest fiscal sponsorship program in the nonprofit arts sector. And how many Fractured Atlas staff members do you think administer this program? The answer is 8. Here are 7 of them. I'm at the top. Again, I'm Courtney Harge, the member advisor. Going top row, starting at your left, is Nathan Zabidio, then Lauren Lattimore, then Kat Stevenson, then Teresa Hubbard, Aisha Jordan, and Sabrina Cedeno. We also have other support staff that have will be joining us and that help us, but we are a small organization that manages over almost 4,000 projects. When you give us a call or shoot us an email, you could be working with any one of us at any given time, depending upon the nature of your question. So the way we're able to run a program of this size so smoothly and efficiently is that we have custom-built online tools that mean a large portion of the program is automated. And there's a great deal of functionality at your fingertips that allow you to control a large portion of your fundraising activities. The purpose of today's presentation is to show you a path forward with our fiscal sponsorship program by giving you a tour of what's available for you on our website and outline some of our program policies and procedures. So, once our board of directors approves you for the program, you'll be able to log into our website and access your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. This is your primary portal for interacting with the program. We're going to talk through some of the features of this page, as well as the program manual. There's no substitute for hands-on learning, and we can't possibly cover everything in this presentation, so I encourage you to thoroughly explore this page on your website and read through the program manual. It's under 40 pages, so as your first steps once you're set up with fiscal sponsorship. So one of the first things to understand about our fiscal sponsorship is that it makes a distinction between earned and contributed revenue. Earned revenue is fees for service, ticket sales, merchandise sales, basically anything that where you're receiving something in exchange for your dollars. So like I said, when you sell a ticket, when you sell merchandise, if you're selling advertising, that's all earned income, and that is not processed through Fractured Atlas. That is paid to you directly. We can only accept contributed revenue. Contributed revenue are donations, grants, in-kind donations, and corporate sponsorships, basically anything where money is given in support of your project and they expect nothing in return. So if they're hiring you to perform for their event, that's a fee for service. That's earned revenue. That's not a contribution. I always like to say the best way to understand a contribution is for the donor, it has to be the equivalent of basically setting the money on fire. They are giving it to you, but they are getting nothing back. And for that, the IRS recognizes US-based donors with the tax deduction. We do allow our projects to accept for-profit investors, but we can't process those investments through Fractured Atlas. There's an addendum we would ask projects to sign if they are expecting for-profit investors. Like I said, we only process charitable donations or contributed revenue for the purposes of your project. If you have other questions, that is definitely something that we can have a longer conversation about via email. So we can help you process donations, contributed revenue in 3 different ways. The first is by debit or credit card on our website or on a crowdfunding campaign that has been linked to your fiscal sponsorship. They can be donations made by check payable to Fractured Atlas. And they can be non-cash donations of goods made in kind to the charitable purposes of your project. Each of our fiscally sponsored projects has a donation landing page on our website where they can direct donors who want to contribute by debit or credit card. We can accept credit card donations up to $20,000 per transaction. So that means your donor can give more. They would just have to do so over multiple transactions. If you have the invisible problem of knowing a donor who wants to contribute more, like I said, they can do that via check or they can do it through multiple charges through our system. Donors who contribute by credit card are required to provide an email address, and we can automatically send them a receipt. Please note that you are prohibited from collecting credit card information from your donors and entering it into our website on their behalf. The donor does have to enter their information directly. This failure to do so or by trying to capture this information yourself can open everybody up to some serious liability issues since you, the sponsored project, are not authorized to use our credit card processor in this way. Your donation landing page is a public-facing page on our website where you should put content that you want potential donors to see. This can be an image or a YouTube or Vimeo video and a brief description of your project or what your current activities are. You can edit your sponsored project's online profile on our website through your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Online Profile button. When you submit changes, an automated email will go to a member of our staff asking for review and approval before it goes live on our website. We typically turn this around in 1 to 2 business days. We'll either approve the changes outright or be in touch with you directly via email if you have any questions about the new material that you're putting up on your profile. We can also accept check donations that are made payable to Fractured Atlas. You're welcome to have donors write your name or the name of your sponsored project on the memo line, but this isn't entirely necessary because we ask that your donors mail you their contribution first. You will then report donations made by check on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Donations button, as you can see on the screenshot. Here is where you'll create the donor record for check contributions. You provide the donor's name, contact information, and other info available to you from their check before forwarding it on to us for processing and deposit. You'd be surprised how many unreported checks arrive at our office, which we end up spending a lot of time doing detective work to figure out. We often have to mail unreported checks back to the donor or back to you, as it's crucial that we receive this information in advance. So, to recap, your donors will send you their check contributions first. You will submit donation reports on our website and forward the checks onto us for processing and deposit. You will be sent an email notification once the donation is processed with a copy of the receipt to forward on to your donor with your thanks. We can accept check donations of any size, but those of $2,500 or more require an extra piece of documentation, the major gift letter. The major gift letter is a simple form letter that's available for you to download from your My Fiscal Sponsorship page for your donor to complete and sign. You're able to upload the major gift letter as an attachment to the donation report, but it's not required. Feel free to send us the check to process before you receive the major gift letter if you aren't able to obtain both at the same time. We're happy to process unreported checks of $2,500 or more without a major gift letter, but the donated funds will not be made available to you until we are in receipt of the signed and completed gift letter. As a nonprofit, we need to submit ourselves to an audit, and this is part of our due diligence to make sure that the donations we receive are verified and connected by the donor. So, things that we cannot accept. 1 is cash. 2 is money orders. In order for us to be able to issue a tax receipt, we need to be able to directly link the money back to a specific individual or entity. A credit card transaction or a check with the donor's bank account and routing numbers on it provide us with exactly that direct link. You're welcome to accept cash or money orders directly for donors who do not want their contribution to be tax deductible. If, however, they want a tax receipt, instruct them to contribute via debit or credit card on our website or by check made payable to Fractured Atlas. We can, however, help you accept non-cash or in-kind donations. These donations have to be physical, tangible items that exist in the real world and that you can touch with your hands, the ownership of which is fully donated over to your project. Let's unpack that a bit further. So, since they have to be physical, tangible items, donations of a person's time or services are not considered by the IRS to be a charitable tax-deductible donation. So if a restaurant donates food or beverage to you, they can get a receipt for those items. But if they donate their catering services, they could not get a tax receipt that includes their contributed time. We can, however, accept gift cards or gift certificates from businesses that otherwise sell these items. In order to be tax deductible, non-cash donations need to be fully donated over to charitable purposes of your project. So donations of rent or rental items won't count. If someone gives you equipment for free that they would normally charge a rental fee for, and you need to return the items when you're done, it's more of a loan. Similarly, donated space doesn't count as tax deductible unless you're being given a full interest in the property. So if somebody has a house that they would like you to have space in, they would actually have to turn the deed of the house over to you for it to be tax deductible. If they're just letting you have space, even if they're offering it at a reduced or a nonprofit rate, that's still not a deduction. That's just a discount. Finally, we cannot accept donations of airfare, air miles, or automobiles, simply because the IRS regulations make those extremely complicated and prohibitive for us to be able to receive. As with check donations, you'll need to report non-cash donations on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. Here you'll also be able to download the non-cash donation letter. This is another simple form letter for the donor to fill out when they provide the items that they are contributing. We ask for a description and a value of the items. You can upload the non-cash donation letter to the donation report when you submit it through your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. For non-cash donations valued at $250 or more, we require a photograph of the donated items or items. Be sure to take that photograph as soon as you receive the donation, especially if it's donated food or beverage. With all donations that we process for the purposes of our fiscally sponsored projects, we deduct an administrative fee to cover the costs of running this program. Our administrative fee pays for our staff time, our website, things like credit card processing and bank fees. The fee starts at 7%, but as you raise more money, the fee is lowered on check donations. If you raise $150,000 or more over the lifetime of your fiscal sponsorship, the admin fee on check donations goes down to 6%. At $500,000 or more, it is reduced to 5%. And if you raise $1 million or more, the fee goes down to 4%. We've definitely had projects raise at least that much money over their time with us. The fee remains at 7% for credit card donations, as the processing fee that we incur does not change. We also incur a 7% fee on the stated value of donated non-cash items. You can either have us charge this fee to your credit card on file or have us deduct it from your available fund balance. And you can always check your fund balance on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page here. But maybe we're going a bit too fast and should take a step back. Before we begin even start processing donations, how do we get people to actually consider making a donation? Well, we ask. And this is often the first hurdle that budding arts entrepreneurs encounter. Every day, I talk to artists or art startups who experience an initial queasiness about actually asking people for money. I encourage our fiscally sponsored projects to consider themselves in good company. All nonprofit artistic ventures in the United States require philanthropic support to keep in operation. That goes for the Metropolitan Opera in New York or the Getty Museum in LA. Don't consider it panhandling or begging. Consider it an offer. You're offering potential patrons an opportunity to get involved with something bigger than themselves. And with fiscal sponsorship, offering them tax deductibility as well. We do have an individual appeal letter template, among other fundraising templates available for you to take a look at on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. Crafting a good letter is more than just plugging your info into a formula and pressing send, so I would strongly encourage you to use this template as a way to kickstart your brainstorming about the letter you intend to send out. But before you send your appeal out to potential donors, please send us a copy for our review and approval. You can email your fundraising materials over to support@fracturedatlas.org. A good rule of thumb is that anytime you mention Fractured Atlas or promise patrons tax deductibility, you should run it by us before sending it out. We require that you do this for a few reasons. First off, it's in your best interest to have another experienced pair of eyes take a look at what you're about to send out. At this point, I've reviewed probably hundreds of donor solicitations, and we have a pretty good idea of what a successful, well-presented appeal letter looks like. We can offer you some tips and tools to potentially maximize the effectiveness of your fundraising materials. So we'll definitely provide feedback where appropriate, but we're also looking to see that you're correctly representing the fiscal sponsorship arrangement. To that end, we've crafted some standard text that we require you to include with your donor solicitation materials. This can be found in your program manual and on our knowledge base. It's just a quick 2-sentence paragraph that succinctly summarizes the fiscal sponsorship arrangement. You're welcome to include it as fine print at the bottom of materials, but it must be in there somewhere. We're also looking to see what you're offering donors in exchange for the contribution. For example, advertising space. Simply, you can't offer advertising space in exchange for a donation. People are welcome to purchase advertising space from you, but it's because they are getting the service of advertising, it is not tax deductible, so it is not a donation. The best way to know the difference between advertising and just like corporate sponsorship, just something that says, this is one of our donors, is really to know, are you in charge of the message? If you control where their logo goes and how, where it's going to be, who's next to it, that is more likely sponsorship, that is more likely just you recognizing your donors. If they have any input on where their logo goes or on how big the information is supposed to be, then it can be advertising. Lastly, you don't wish to editorialize. You can't say, go to so-and-so dealership. This is the best car dealership in the city. That is advertising. That is editorializing on the product. But simply saying, thank you to so-and-so dealership for supporting our work can be considered sponsorship. We're always happy to have longer conversations about this if you want to talk more about the distinction. Other things we're looking for, are you running a raffle? This might be a good idea, but you're prohibited from running it through your fiscal sponsorship. To reiterate, you can't award donors raffle tickets in exchange for a tax-deductible donation. Raffles are considered a form of gambling, which is generally regulated at the state level, and so it's not something that Fractured Atlas can get involved with. Whenever you offer donors rewards of goods or services in exchange for their contribution, it makes the donation partially deductible above and beyond the fair market value of the rewards they are receiving. So, for example, if you are hosting some type of crowdfunding campaign and you offer T-shirts in exchange for a donation, the donation is only tax deductible for anything that is greater than the value of the T-shirt. So let's say you have a $50 donation, you offer T-shirts for $15. That means that $35 of that donation is tax deductible. We need donations to at least be partially deductible. So that means you couldn't have a $50 donation and be giving away a $50 T-shirt. You wouldn't be able to offer donors rewards of equal or greater value to the amount that they are contributing. Such an exchange no longer becomes contributed revenue, and that is a purchase or earned revenue. I see we've had some questions directly about crowdfunding, so I have seen you and I'm going to answer them. The first question around that is crowdfunding contributed revenue? And that is a good question. It actually depends on the crowdfunding platform. It really depends on who's processing it. Indiegogo, Kickstarter, there's one for film called Seed and Spark. If you're not associated with a nonprofit, if you're running campaigns on those platforms, those are in fact considered earned income. They are not contributed income. There's a specific question where somebody's asking about Indiegogo. Indiegogo is in fact ending its partnership with us and actually many of its nonprofit partners. So that means an Indiegogo campaign specifically would be considered earned income. It would not be processed through Fractured Atlas. We do have a limited kind of one-time exception for any campaign that will end before March 30th, where you can still do an Indiegogo campaign through our partnership. But you should email support@fracturedatlas.org if that is something you're interested in. We are currently creating, it's in development, it's actually live, our own crowdfunding site. You can see a screenshot of it here. These are two of our campaigns that are currently active on it. And campaigns run through our crowdfunding site are subject only to our 7% fee. There's no additional fee on top of that. And all the contributions through there would be considered contributed income, so they would be tax deductible. So this way we're able to process these donations, these partially deductible donations through your campaign directly through our site. I'm certain that in the year 2017, you all have encountered crowdfunding campaigns up to this point. So we're happy to answer some more specific questions if you have them. But we encourage our projects to run a campaign at least once as part of their overall fundraising strategy. We've particularly built our platform to fulfill the need for artists wanting to run campaigns in the nonprofit space. Just to see these additional questions. The question is, how do we know which platforms specifically are acceptable? Well, the only campaigns or platforms that you could use would be ones where we process the funds, because for it to count as a nonprofit, the funds have to go direct, or for it to be counted as non-deductible or tax deductible, they have to go directly through the nonprofit. So only platforms that we have a partnership with would be eligible for fiscal sponsorship. And currently, because both Indiegogo and previous partners Rocket Hub have actually gotten out of those partnerships because they're going in different directions in their business. The only place that you can run a crowdfunding campaign and have the donations be tax deductible currently is through us. It's through our platform. what is the advantage of initiating a crowdfunding campaign when you can direct people to the donor page? That is a good question. It really is a strategy. Crowdfunding is a tool to generally motivate people to give over a very specific period of time. I would like to say that crowdfunding is like a party. So if you want other people to see people giving, if you want to use the momentum and motivation of kind of the group process, then crowdfunding is ideal for that. But if you're doing like long term or even just consistent individual giving, where you don't necessarily need people to see you like fighting toward a goal, or you aren't writing for a particular deadline, it's perfectly okay to just direct people to the Fractured Atlas donor page. That will be your long-term fundraising page. Crowdfunding pages are ideally for short-term, like 90 days or less. Um, I see there's some other questions, particularly about legal entity type, and we're going to get to that. I'm going to hold off on that question until the end, but I do want to say that I hear you, and with some as we go forward, you might be able to get some more information in support of that question. Alternatively, if you don't necessarily want to run a crowdfunding campaign, but would like to offer perks to your donors, let's say you want to offer gifts um, to your donors in exchange for your donations, you can use giving levels. You can find them from the My Fiscal sponsorship page. Specifically, another crowdfunding question is Kickstarter or similar cases Indiegogo. Yes, Kickstarter only works with for-profit projects, so they are also considered earned income. And again, you're welcome to use these other platforms, but you just cannot offer the tax deduction, and the funds would not be processed through Fractured Atlas. So to go back to giving levels, so you can go to find them from the My Fiscal sponsorship page under the donations tab and hit giving levels. Your donors will then be presented with options on our website for different giving levels that they can contribute at. And if you want to offer donors rewards, their online debit or credit card donations can be partially tax deductible. So what that means is you set up your giving levels. You decide what you're giving, what the fair market value is, and what the donor would need to get or what the donor would need to give to receive those benefits. So applying for grants. One of the things that fiscal sponsorship can do is open the door to institutional funding from foundations or corporations. As with the approvals of your individual solicitations and campaigns, we want to be involved when you apply for grants. Before you start looking at grants, however, you should be aware of our grant eligibility requirement. The grant eligibility requirement states that we need to see that you have at least $1,000 in contributed income. So that can be a previously run crowdfunding campaign. It can be a previously awarded grant. It can be a letter from your donor stating that they've given. Funders have told us that they want to see that there is a base of fundraising support available to the project before they are looking at supporting it institutionally. So we do ask that you meet our $1,000 grant eligibility requirement. We also have a review process. So every grant, every time you're sending out a letter of inquiry or intent to apply, we need to review it, partially because we also have relationship with funders and we want to make sure everything is being presented appropriately. Lastly, we want to be sure that the content of your grant fits the guidelines and that you're appropriately eligible. We also, as the applicant of record, if you're going to be receiving the funds on the grants, we need to have a full record of the application. We need to have for grant award payments of contracts and reporting requirements. The project is ultimately responsible for completing any reporting requirements, but as we go through, we need to have all the information so that we can support you through the process. I do see that there is an additional question about the crowdfunding. Um, the question is, how will will the crowdfunding site be advertised? Well, we are developing a marketing strategy around an official launch of our new site. I want to be very clear that there is an assumption that because crowdfunding sites get a fair amount of traffic, that donor that the crowdfunding site or crowdfunding platform generates traffic, and that's actually a misconception. The majority of donations to any crowdfunding campaign come from either your immediate network or one or two people removed from you. So we will have a very large marketing campaign and official launch of our site, but the campaigns that are already running on the site have actually already been successful, in that they are motivating their donors and their networks to come to the site. Again, it's less about getting audiences that don't know you to contribute to your crowdfunding campaign, and more about what is your strategy for giving people access to this platform, or giving people letting people know about your project or organization in a way that will motivate them to give. So you've successfully solicited donations and had patrons donate to your project. What next? How do you access these donated funds? First, you'll need to send us the information for your checking account, which you can do by downloading the sign-up form for electronic funds transfer, or EFT, from your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Fund Releases button. We strongly recommend that you have an account for your project or organization's finances that is separate from your personal bank account. It doesn't need to be a business bank account. It can just be a separate personal checking account. Here's what the EFT form looks like. It's pretty simple. You can send us a completed form with a voided check in one of three ways. You can scan and email it to support@fracturedatlas.org. You can fax it to 212-277-8025, or you can mail it to us. All of our contact information is available on our website. We need the voided check and or another acceptable form of documentation to be able to substantiate the account and routing numbers, just to make sure that you are authorized to transfer funds into the account, and to make sure everything is properly documented. Once we've received your checking account information, you'll be able to submit a fund release request through our website for available funds. We hold all donations for 7 days after we process them. That makes sure that the check doesn't bounce or the credit card charge isn't disputed. After 7 days, donated funds are available for you to request, unless you're waiting on a major gift letter for a check donation of $2,500 or more. We're happy to hold on to donated funds as long as you need us to, provided that you remain a dues-paying member of Fractured Atlas with an active fiscally sponsored project, and then we'll release them to you when you have product-related expenses. We do not automatically transfer funds to our projects. As a fiscal sponsor, we need to demonstrate that we maintain a certain degree of discretion and control over how the funds are raised through our program and are used. The fund release request process is a control in place to make sure that fiscally sponsored projects are using funds in alignment with our charitable mission. When you submit a fund release request, you'll let us know how much you need and how you'll be spending the money using some pretty broad expense category line items. So you can say that $1,000 for public relations and $500 for space rental. There is an other expense category, but here's a helpful hint. We almost never let anyone use other as an explanation for their expenses. Almost 100% of the time, your expenses will fit into one of the categories provided. One thing you're not allowed to do is to re-grant funds raised through our program to another individual or entity with no strings attached. The best use of fiscal sponsorship is to raise money to raise money to spend on expenditures related to the art that you're creating or the service you're providing. This could include paying people a salary or stipend for their time, but it can't be just awarding grants through fiscal sponsorship funds to another entity. For particularly large fund release requests, we do require documentation. We reserve the right to request documentation for any fund release request, but we do require it for anything that's $5,000 or more. That includes documentation as a receipt, is contract, invoices, purchase orders, anything that says that you and the person you're paying have agreed to this amount that you're paying. I see we have a question around donations. This question is about real estate donations. It says, to be clear, as new projects, we will not be able to accept or ask for it due to the lack of the 7% fee. No, we don't really accept real estate donations. We can have a longer conversation of what that is. If you don't have a fund balance, but do wish to have a non-cash or in-kind donation, you would have to be willing to pay the 7% fee from the credit card we have on file. So if you don't have a fund balance currently, but do wish to accept non-cash donations, the fee will be assessed from that credit card. So yes, for fund release requests, be sure to have the documentation. We do also require that you have the documentation on hand, even if we don't request it. It is important, just as best practices and a good business strategy, for you to be able to track where your expenses are and who you sent money to. When you apply for fiscal sponsorship, if you recall, you were asked to provide a legal entity with the U.S. taxpayer ID. This is either an individual with their social security number or a business entity with its employer identification number, EIN. We can work with any type of legal entity. Individual sole proprietor, corporation, partnership, etc. We ask for this because funds dispersed through our fiscal sponsorship program are recorded as income to that legal entity in the form of a grant. That leads to one of the questions I put on hold is, can my theater company be fiscally sponsored, or do I need to put an individual member of the theater company's name as a fiscally sponsored person? If it can be a company, does it need to be an official entity like an LLC? So we do need a valid tax identifier for to be considered the legal recipient of the funds that are released to the project. That can be an individual or the company. That does not matter. It's based on what you have. If it's going to be the company, it can you don't have to be incorporated, but you do have to have a legal entity of some type. So or you do have to have an EIN, a tax identifier of some type. So your best bet is to talk to your accountant or a tax professional to see what is best for you. You can have an individual fiscal sponsorship, like associated with one person's tax ID number, and have the name of it be the company. We can sponsor the activities of the theater company, even though the legal entity or the associated with it is an individual social security number. There's a question specifically about the New York State Council for the Arts grant for NISCA, and I'm going to direct that person to our blog. We actually have a blog post that talks about what the requirement for applying to NISCA is for us. It is we do have we have a long kind of deadline process. So I will share that in the chat box. You can also find it if you go to blog at fracturedatlas.org. You'll be able to find this information there as well. This follow-up question is, are the donated funds income that will be taxed on as individuals or companies? That is a very great question. So the legal entity associated with your fiscal sponsorship, is considered a grantee recipient of the funds. This is a Model C fiscal sponsorship, which is a grantor-grantee relationship. So that means we are releasing the funds to you. And we report those funds listed through a 1099 miss or 1099 miscellaneous to individuals, partnerships, and LLCs. And that shows all the funds that were dispersed during the previous calendar year as grant income. So yes, to answer the question, yes, that is considered income that is taxable to the legal entity associated with the fiscal sponsorship. Corporations are not issued 1099s, but they will still need to report the fractured atlas income on their tax documents. Generally, you should not have to pay taxes on them if you can declare using the documentation, if you can declare the expenses, that these expenses were not personal. So the more documentation you have, the better your records are, the more likely you are to be able to not have to pay taxes on those funds once you file your taxes. The question is, can we use the name of, to apply to fiscal sponsorship, can you use the name of the company, which is an incorporated, and the EIN of an LLC? Yes, you can. The name of when you sign up for fiscal sponsorship in the application, there is a legal entity name and an EIN. Those have to match. So you have to, if you're going to put your name as a person, you have to put your social security number. If you're going to put the name of an LLC, then you need to put that EIN's number. And then there's a separate section where you can put your project or company name. Though that does not have to match the legal entity name, but your tax legal entity information does have to match. This is a specific question about donations. If a company wants to pay a bill for the company but not donating a specific product or good, is that contributed revenue, or that can be tax deductible? If a donor wants to contribute the amount of a bill, what they would have to do is contribute that amount to Fractured Atlas, and then you would have to release those funds in service of paying that bill. For something to be tax deductible, for it to be considered a donation, it has to be received by us, the nonprofit entity. Can we declare your 7%? That is something you'll specifically have to talk to your accountant about. What is able to be declared and not is slightly beyond our purview, because it is different for each individual. So you will have to provide your documentation and discuss that with your accountant. This is a good clarifying question. If we, Fractured Atlas, accept donations on behalf of the legal entity and don't disperse those funds right away, does the product need to declare those funds? No, you do not. You only need to declare funds that were released to you. So let's say you got a $10,000 donation in December of 2016, but you didn't release any of that until today. Technically, you have no liability for 2016. Once your funds are starting to be released, then that's when you are liable for those funds. Will donors see the name of the legal entity they're giving money to, or only the name of the company, show, product we're raising funds for? The donors will only see the name of your fiscally sponsored project, not the associated legal entity. What time is the best time of year for donation requests? It very much depends. The holidays, starting October, November, December, that is the busiest time. Everybody is asking for donations around then. January and August are the slowest times, and those are the worst times to run crowdfunding campaigns. But it's mostly dependent on, like, what is your messaging? How are you operating? The summer is very slow, but that may also be just dependent on where you are. Like New York, as a city, slows down in the summer. People tend to leave. But that might be different based on where you're located. It might also be different based on what industry or what discipline you're working in. Are we able to see a donor's email information in order to send them a thank you and or add them to our mailing list? Yes. Based on, the donor can choose to be anonymous, so that would be the opportunity where you would not see them. However, we do provide, and you can access on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page, the necessary donor information. I see a few more questions, and so I'm going to get to them, but I want to get through the rest of this content, and I promise to come back and answer these at that point. As I said, just to reiterate, because we only release funds to you when you request it for use on your project-related expenses, you should be able to offset that income on your taxes using the expenses that the funds paid for. We strongly recommend that you use an accountant to file and keep careful documentation of your expenditures. An important thing to keep in mind is that your product is a separate business entity from Fractured Atlas. One of the great aspects of this is that you maintain complete ownership over the work that you create. We do not grant you 501c3 status. Only the IRS can do that. Rather, we are extending some of the benefits of our nonprofit status to the projects that we sponsor. To that extent, we'll want you to check in with us on a few things, primarily the use of our tax identifier. I'm sure if a friend of yours asked for your social security number, you'd be curious as to why. In the same way, anytime you encounter a situation that requires our EIN, please let us know so that we can advise on its usage. We're happy to provide sponsorship confirmation letters addressed to specific potential donors or sponsors to help grease the wheels, but we cannot provide a one-size-fits-all confirmation document with our EIN, as we want to be involved each and every time someone is requesting that information. Just email us at support@fracturedatlas.org. We're not able to help you set up a bank account using our EIN, however. Any account that you create needs to be set up in your own name with your own tax ID. So don't sign up for anything that requires our tax identification number without running it by us first. We can also provide a letter to help you obtain nonprofit rates from vendors that offer them. It's ultimately up to the vendor if they will extend you the rate, but most are willing to do so. This is especially helpful with space rentals. If the venue offers a nonprofit rate, we can usually help you get a discount. Again, just shoot us an email and we'll send you the letter. Nonprofit rates do not apply to bulk postage for your mailings. This is something that you would only have access to if you had your own 501c3 status. We also do not help you with sales tax exemption because that's not transferable and it's only available in the state that we are in. The final major fiscal sponsorship policy to bring to your attention is our annual report. For any fiscally sponsored project that either processed donations or requested fund releases in a given calendar year, we are going to require that you submit to us an annual report updating us on your activities. The report is due on April 1st of the year, and we will send out 3 reminders starting at the beginning of the year. If you don't complete the report by April 1st, we will freeze your fiscal sponsorship, but it's relatively simple to unfreeze. All you have to do is submit the report. You can access your annual report on the My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Info Reports button. This report is entirely online, so you don't need to prepare a different document, and it has 2 major components. The first is that we ask you to provide a brief narrative description of what you accomplished in the previous calendar year. This can be as detailed as you'd like, although we prefer that you keep it relatively brief so it doesn't take us too long to review. With the narrative, you provide a numerical impact for your work to show how many people were exposed to your work and how many artists participated. We also ask for updated financials. Because we only process contributed revenue for your fiscally sponsored project, we are only aware of income and expenditures relating to the funds that we've handled. So here's an opportunity to tell us about other funds and how they were spent. Also, if you changed how funds released through our program were spent, like if you said that $1,000 was going to be used for transportation, but you ended up spending it on utilities, here's your chance to let us know so we can better adjust our own books. The annual report is another important way that we demonstrate the discretion and control over how funds raised through our program are used. And this is also a way for us to collect data about the artists and arts organizations that we serve so that we can better understand our own impact on the nonprofit arts sector in the United States. The more accurately you can provide your data, the more complete our picture is for the kind of business our sponsored projects are able to do in their own communities. I'm going to open up all the way for questions momentarily, but I hope you've gotten a sense of how our fiscal sponsorship program is easy to use and how much power you have at your fingertips through the online tools available on our website. I would encourage you once again to thoroughly explore your My Fiscal Sponsorship page and our program manual for a more comprehensive overview of all of our program policies and procedures. Before we open up fully for questions, I'd like to quickly plug Fractured Atlas's other programs and services. First is Artfully. Artfully is a ticket and patron tracking software offered to members of Fractured Atlas. The great thing about Artfully is that fiscally sponsored projects' donor information syncs automatically when you create an account with Artfully. This allows you to track your donors and link your Artfully with MailChimp to send out e-blasts and sell tickets to your events. Second is spacefinder. It's an online marketplace that matches renters to venues based on their unique needs. It has customizable searches for space, venues with synced calendars, and venues that let you pay through their listings. There are a variety of locations that spacefinder is at, and more coming every day. Lastly is our insurance program. This allows you to receive quotes and buy insurance for your artistic endeavors. You can insure your art, your people, and your events. So now we are into questions. I'm going to go through our list. I see we have a few, and I'm always happy to answer more. If you feel that you need additional support or you want to have a longer conversation, you can always email our staff at support@fracturedatlas.org, and we can make it happen. So this first question, what if we raise more money than we use for an individual project? Can we forward it towards future projects? That is possible. It very much depends on how much you've raised over or whether or not you have expenses. I will say this question is asked all the time and it never happens. People always have expenditures or they always have costs that are associated with their project. So we're always happy to have a longer conversation if you get to the end of your project and find that you just have a whole bunch of money that you just don't know what to do with. But that is just never the case. Generally, you can pay staff. There's something to be reimbursed for. There is a project related expense. And if in the case of if those things aren't available, and then we can have a longer specific conversation at that point. This is, I'm using a lot of funds to pay commissioning fees. According to the IRS, would these fees be considered payment for independent contractors? Do I need to issue composers 1099s? Yes to both questions. You're paying your independent contractors is considered a payment for service. So yes, you would have to issue 1099s if for anyone that you paid $600 or more. This is why we strongly advise working with an accountant or a tax professional so that you can make sure that you are protected and covered and that you are following the things that are necessary for your project. How does a project earn featured status on our site? If you would like to be featured in our Meet the Project blog, you can email us at support@fracturedatlas.org, and we'll see if we can fit it in. We do a monthly showcase of one of our projects, generally one that is currently active and engaged in a particular type of campaign. As far as on the Meet the Project page, the page that shows all of our fiscally sponsored projects, that's random affiliated with the site. We have no control over that. As new members this year, would you be submitting an annual report? No, you don't have to submit an annual report. It's for the previous year. So we are currently April 1st, 2017 is the due date for annual reports for people who were active in 2016. If you got a donation and didn't have the funds released, do you need to submit an annual report? The answer is probably. We have questions for people who've received donations but didn't release those funds. There are 3 kind of yes or no questions that will help determine what type of annual report you should receive. So your best bet, if you were active in 2016 or received a donation in 2016, is to log into your membership, go to My Fiscal Sponsorship, check the annual report page, and see which questions you need. Where can I find the program manual? You can go to our site and search program manual, and you can find it. Also, if you've been approved for fiscal sponsorship already, it was attached to the email that told you that you were fiscally sponsored. It's in that email, it's titled instructions. It's a PDF document. For monthly membership dues, are they paid automatically or do you pay it voluntarily every month? They are paid automatically. They are deducted from the card we have on file on the same date every month. Um, if regarding office or real estate rentals which are donated, how does the 7% work in that case? Um, Office or real estate rentals cannot be donated. Those are not a donation. You would have to be given the deed to the building. That is considered rentals are considered partial interests. So those are not considered donations. They are not non-cash donations. So the 7% does not apply in that case because we would not receive them as donations. Um, if you, how do I know if you've been approved for fiscal sponsorship? So you become a member of Fractured Atlas, and then you must submit the fiscal sponsorship application. If you have not submitted that application, then you would not currently be fiscally sponsored. And once you've submitted the application and are approved, you will then receive an email that says fiscal sponsorship is a go. All right, are there any more questions? Again, if you think of something later, or if you have an additional a question, after this call is over, feel free to email support@fracturedatlas.org. We're always happy to um, respond or to clarify anything you may need. I'll also be sending a link to past webinars. We do have other webinars in this series, including Intro to Fiscal Sponsorship, and crowdfunding, telling your story. So yes, I'm going to email a link to clarify, a link to, if not this particular recording, a recording of a version of the same webinar, so that you can review it and still get the information you may need. All right. Thank you all for taking the time to attend tonight's presentation. If I've done my job right, you should have a clearer picture of how to use fiscal sponsorship, of what the road forward is like. Again, don't be afraid to reach out to us if you need anything further. And thank you all for sharing your evening with me so we could answer these questions. Have a great night.